On a cold afternoon in November 1971, a quiet man walked into an airport in Portland, Oregon. He looked ordinary. He wore a dark suit, a white shirt, a black tie. Nothing about him seemed unusual. No one could have guessed that within a few hours, he would become the central figure in one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in American history. A mystery that would confuse the FBI for decades. A mystery that remains unsolved even today. His name, at least the name he gave, was Dan Cooper. But the world would remember him by a different name. D.B. Cooper. And this is the story of the man who hijacked a plane and vanished forever. It was November 24th, 1971, the day before Thanksgiving. Airports across America were busy. Families were traveling to meet loved ones. Businessmen were returning home. Holiday excitement filled the air. At Portland International Airport, a middle-aged man approached the Northwest Orient Airlines ticket counter. He paid cash for a one-way ticket to Seattle. The ticket cost only $20. Back then, airport security was very different from today. There were no metal detectors, no body scanners, no ID checks like modern airports. A passenger could simply buy a ticket and board a plane. And that's exactly what this man did. Witnesses later described him as calm and polite. He appeared to be in his 40s, about 6 feet tall, with dark hair and a composed personality. Nothing seemed suspicious. When Flight 305 prepared for departure, Cooper quietly took his seat near the back of the aircraft. The Boeing 727 carried 36 passengers and 6 crew members. For the first few minutes, everything seemed completely normal. The plane took off. Passengers relaxed. Flight attendants performed their duties. Nobody realized history was about to be made. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper called a flight attendant named Florence Schaffner. At first, she assumed he was simply trying to flirt. Business travelers often pass notes to flight attendants. She wasn't interested, so she ignored him. Then Cooper leaned toward her and quietly said something chilling. "You'd better look at that note." She opened it. The message was short, direct, terrifying. "I have a bomb." At that moment, everything changed. Florence sat beside him, trying to remain calm, trying not to alarm the passengers. Cooper then opened his briefcase slightly. Inside, she reportedly saw wires and cylindrical objects. Whether it was truly a bomb remains unknown, but it looked convincing enough. Cooper explained his demands. He wanted $200,000 in cash, for parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting in Seattle. If his demands were met, nobody would be harmed. The flight attendant carried the message to the cockpit. The pilots immediately contacted airline officials and law enforcement. As news spread, panic could have easily erupted. But Cooper remained remarkably calm. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten passengers. He didn't act aggressively. Instead, he quietly sat in his seat, smoking cigarettes and drinking bourbon. According to witnesses, he behaved more like a businessman than a criminal. Meanwhile, authorities faced an impossible decision. Should they risk the lives of everyone on board? Or should they meet his demands? Eventually, they chose to cooperate. As Flight 305 circled the Seattle area, officials rushed to gather the ransom money. Banks worked quickly. Law enforcement photographed every bill. The serial numbers were carefully recorded. The FBI hoped this would eventually help identify Cooper. Hours later, the aircraft landed in Seattle. What happened next stunned the world. Cooper allowed all passengers to leave safely. One by one, they stepped off the plane. Most had no idea how close they had come to danger. Once the passengers were gone, airline employees delivered the money and parachutes. Cooper inspected everything carefully. Then he made another surprising decision. He ordered the plane back into the air. Only a small crew remained on board. The pilots, a flight engineer, and one flight attendant. The destination? Unknown. His instructions were specific. Fly toward Mexico. Maintain a relatively low altitude. Keep the speed slow. Leave the rear stairway accessible. The crew obeyed. As darkness covered the Pacific Northwest, the Boeing 727 climbed into the stormy night sky. Rain pounded the aircraft. Minutes passed. The crew could hear movement. Then suddenly, a warning light illuminated inside the cockpit. The rear stairway had been activated. The pilots exchanged nervous glances. What was happening? Were they about to explode? Was Cooper preparing another demand? Or was something even more unbelievable taking place? Outside, freezing rain battered the plane. Winds roared at nearly 200 miles per hour. The night sky was black. Below lay miles of forests, rivers, and mountains. One wrong move meant certain death. Yet investigators now believe that at approximately 8:13 p.m., D.B. Cooper opened the rear staircase and jumped into the darkness, into the storm, into history, and from that moment forward, nobody ever saw him again. The crew had no way of knowing. They only knew that somewhere over the dark forests of the Pacific Northwest, a man carrying $200,000 had jumped from a moving aircraft. The pilots continued flying. Eventually, the plane landed safely. The FBI was waiting. Agents rushed aboard. They searched every corner of the aircraft. What they found was surprising. Cooper was gone. Completely gone. The only things left behind were a few clues. A black clip-on tie clip, and questions. Lots of questions. At first, many investigators believed Cooper had almost no chance of surviving. Think about the situation. It was night. Heavy rain was falling. Strong winds were blowing. The temperature outside was freezing. Below were dense forests, rivers, mountains, and rough terrain. Even experienced parachutists would consider such a jump extremely dangerous. Yet there was a problem. No body was found. No parachute was found. No sign of Cooper was found. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The next morning, one of the largest manhunts in FBI history began. Agents spread across Washington state and nearby regions. Helicopters scanned forests. Ground teams searched remote areas. Investigators interviewed witnesses. Everyone wanted answers. Who was D.B. Cooper? Where had he come from? And where had he gone? The FBI quickly realized they were facing a unique criminal. Most hijackers panic. Most criminals make mistakes. But Cooper appeared calm, intelligent, and prepared. He knew specific details about the Boeing 727. He knew the aircraft had a rear stairway that could be lowered during flight. This wasn't common knowledge. Many investigators believed he had some kind of aviation experience. Perhaps he was a pilot. Perhaps a military veteran. Perhaps someone who had worked around aircraft. The mystery deepened when experts studied his behavior. Unlike many criminals, Cooper wasn't emotional. He wasn't reckless. He remained polite throughout the entire hijacking. Several crew members later described him as respectful. He even thanked people during the ordeal. That behavior confused investigators. Why would a dangerous criminal act so professionally? Meanwhile, FBI agents carefully examined every piece of evidence left behind. The tie became especially important. For years, it sat inside evidence storage. At the time, technology was limited. Investigators hoped future advances might reveal hidden clues. But in 1971, there was little they could do. The ransom money became another major focus. Remember, every bill had been photographed. Every serial number had been recorded. If Cooper spent the money, investigators hoped they would eventually find it. Banks across the country received lists of the serial numbers. Businesses were instructed to watch for the bills. The FBI believed it was only a matter of time. Sooner or later, Cooper would make a mistake. Or so they thought. Weeks passed. Nothing. Months passed. Nothing. Years passed. Still nothing. The money never appeared. No verified sightings emerged. No strong suspects were identified. The case became stranger with each passing year. Then investigators began analyzing the jump itself. Experts recreated the conditions. They studied weather reports, flight paths, wind speeds, aircraft performance.